Hey everyone, let me tell you about the amazing world of Parthian warfare. The Parthians were incredibly clever on the battlefield, using chaos and strategy to outsmart their enemies. They were some of the best fighters of their time, and their secret weapon was their cavalry and archers. They even invented a famous move called the Parthian shot, where a rider could shoot arrows backward while galloping at full speed. It wasn't just cool, it was super effective, and could completely change a battle. The Parthian army was all about their cavalry, which came in two types. First, there were the light horse archers, who were fast and deadly. These riders used special bows made from wood, sinew, and horn, which were really strong and accurate. Their arrows could go through armor and leave enemies with no place to hide. Then, there were the heavy cavalry, called Cataphracts. These warriors and their horses were covered in armor, making them almost impossible to defeat in close combat. They carried long lances and swords, and were perfect for charging through enemy lines and finishing off anyone still standing. The Parthian riders were also super skilled. They came from the steppes of Central Asia, where they practically grew up on horseback. Ancient writers talked about how fast and agile their horses were. Strabo even mentioned that their horses could travel long distances without getting tired. This made it easy for the Parthians to stay ahead of their enemies and quickly change directions during a fight. Xenophon, an old writer, explained how important it was for a horse to stop and turn quickly, and this was something Parthian riders were experts at. It made them nearly impossible to catch. The Parthians didn't just have great riders, they also had amazing horses. They bred their horses to be strong, fast, and smooth to ride. This meant their warriors could ride into battle without feeling tired, and be ready to fight right away. These horses were even trained to help in battle, like trampling over enemy soldiers. The combination of awesome horses and expert training gave the Parthians a huge advantage. When it came to protecting themselves, the Parthians were smart about it. Their light archers wore simple clothes like tunics and trousers, using their speed to stay safe. Their bows let them attack from far away, keeping them out of reach. The heavy cavalry, on the other hand, were like walking tanks. They wore full body armor, including helmets, and even their horses were covered in armor. Armed with long lances and swords, these warriors were nearly unstoppable when they charged into battle. The Parthian army wasn't just about strong fighters and good gear. It was well organized and innovative. They controlled huge areas, from the Mediterranean all the way to India and China, and even gave the mighty Romans a tough time. They succeeded not just because of their tactics, but because they were able to adapt and improve in every way. As Strabo said, the Parthians were perfectly built for winning wars and ruling their lands. And now let's dive deeper into the brilliant military strategy and tactics of the Parthians. Their approach to warfare wasn't just about brute force, but also about precision, clever planning, and understanding their strengths. Even though we don't have detailed records of their chain of command, it's clear their success was built on a structured hierarchy. At the top was the king, commanding supreme authority, while lieutenants and commanders oversaw different units of their forces. This organization was crucial to coordinating their highly specialized cavalry and archers. The Parthians were experts at choosing battlegrounds that gave their cavalry an edge. They aimed to minimize casualties by avoiding head-on confrontations. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics that worked perfectly against armies reliant on slow, concentrated troop movements. Their horse archers, riding the swiftest horses, were the stars of these operations. Backed by camel-mounted supply lines that kept the archers well stocked with arrows, they turned enemy infantry into helpless targets. These infantry units, unable to strike back without engaging up close, were no match for the relentless rain of arrows. Even though infantry wasn't a major part of the Parthian army, they weren't above recruiting allied forces when the situation called for it. Sometimes, these infantry units helped out in ways that complemented the cavalry's efforts. A key tactic of the Parthians was to frustrate their enemies, exhausting and separating them from their supplies. They often used fake retreats to lure opponents into overextending themselves. Once the enemy was vulnerable, they unleashed devastating arrow volleys, leaving their foes in disarray. The light horse archers and heavy cataphracts worked together seamlessly. Light cavalry, made up of common recruits, was relatively cheap to equip. These riders relied on speed and precision, staying mobile and out of harm's way. The cataphracts, on the other hand, were a whole different story. These heavily armored warriors came from noble families and were far fewer in number. Outfitting them with full armor and weapons was expensive, so they were used sparingly but strategically. Their role was often to finish what the archers started. If the horse archers managed to weaken enemy forces, the cataphracts moved in to clean up, intercepting cavalry and wiping out any remaining resistance with their long lances and swords. When the cataphracts went on the offensive, the results were nothing short of catastrophic for their enemies. Imagine a massive armored horse, charging at full speed, smashing into enemy ranks. Soldiers were scattered like pins in a bowling alley, their lines broken and their morale shattered. And when multiple cataphracts attacked together, it was chaos. Bodies flew, shields fell, and gaps opened up, leaving soldiers exposed to the Parthian archers' deadly aim. This devastating combination of light and heavy cavalry was a game-changer in ancient warfare. One of the most famous demonstrations of Parthian tactics was the Battle of Carrhae. Here, they didn't just rely on military skill. They also used psychological warfare to great effect. Before the battle, the Parthian general Serena cleverly hid most of his troops behind a small advance guard, tricking the Romans into underestimating his forces. To further unsettle their enemies, the Parthians unleashed the booming sound of kettle drums. These weren't ordinary drums, they had bronze bells inside, creating a sound described as a mix of thunder and wild beasts. The noise alone was enough to shake the confidence of the Roman soldiers. When the Romans finally advanced, the Parthians unveiled their full might. They spread out and revealed their shining armor, which had been hidden under skins and robes. The sudden sight of their gleaming steel helmets and breastplates dazzled and intimidated the Romans. Serena, always observing and adapting, initially held back his cataphracts when he saw the tightly packed Roman formation with interlocked shields. Instead, he ordered his horse archers to unleash a relentless barrage of arrows. These missiles tore through Roman armor, leaving soldiers helpless under the onslaught. The Romans thought they could outlast the attack, assuming the Parthians would eventually run out of arrows. But when they saw camels bringing in fresh supplies, panic set in. Crassus, the Roman commander, sent his son Publius with a force of cavalry and infantry to counterattack. This played right into the Parthians' hands. The light horse archers pretended to retreat, luring Publius's troops into a trap. When the Romans gave chase, they were ambushed by the cataphracts. As the Roman troops tried to regroup, the Parthian light cavalry circled back, kicking up dust to create confusion and raining down arrows once more. In the end, Publius's forces were overwhelmed. The cataphracts' superior armor and weapons gave them the upper hand in close combat. Cassius Dio's account highlights how the combination of Parthian archers and cataphracts left the Romans with no good options. If they tried to protect themselves from the arrows by clustering together, the cataphracts charged in and scattered them. If they spread out to avoid the cataphracts, they became easy targets for the archers. It was a no-win situation. That day, the Romans suffered one of their most humiliating defeats. Publius died in the battle, and his father Crassus met a grim fate later. Few Roman soldiers managed to escape. The Parthians had shown the world their unparalleled mastery of cavalry warfare and cemented their reputation as one of the most formidable forces of their time. And the Parthians didn't rise to power quickly or easily. Their journey was full of ups and downs. Despite many challenges, they managed to become one of the most powerful forces in the ancient world. It all began in 247 BCE, when Arsaces, the first king of Parthia, saw his chance to act. The Seleucid Empire was weakened by internal fights and wars with the Ptolemies, so Arsaces took control of the province of Parthia. But this success didn't last long. In 209 BCE, Seleucid ruler Antiochus III took back the territory. However, when Antiochus turned his attention elsewhere, and after the Seleucids suffered further losses due to the Treaty of Apamea, the Parthians were ready to strike again. By 174 BCE, King Phraates started expanding Parthian territory, gaining control over regions between Hyrcania and Media. But it was his brother, Mithridates, who truly changed the game. Around 168 BCE, Mithridates turned east and conquered Bactria, near India and China. Then, he looked west to Media. After 9 years of tough fighting, he finally took Media in 151 BCE. After a short break, Mithridates pushed further west into Mesopotamia, a rich area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. By 144 BCE, he had taken the city of Seleucia, the former capital of the Seleucid Empire, and in 141 BCE, he captured Babylon. Despite a counterattack by Seleucid King Demetrius II, Mithridates held his ground and added more territory, including Elam and its capital Susa. However, victories often brought new challenges. When Mithridates' son, Phraates II, became king, he had to deal with revolts and invasions. He defeated Antiochus VII of the Seleucid Empire but died during a failed campaign against the Scythians. The turmoil didn't stop there. Phraates' successor, Artabanus I, had to spend much of his time putting down uprisings. Unfortunately, his reign ended when he was killed in battle against the Uegi. Then came Mithridates II, one of Parthia's greatest rulers. He not only brought stability to the empire, but also expanded its borders further than ever before. He strengthened Parthia's hold on Mesopotamia and Bactria, captured the city of Dura Europo in the west, and extended the empire's reach into Armenia and Albania. By the height of his rule, Parthia stretched from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to China, making it a true superpower. But with great power came even greater enemies. Rome, another rising force, soon became Parthia's main rival. Under Phraates III, Parthia lost several important regions, like Armenia and Albania, to the Romans. After Phraates was assassinated by his own sons, the kingdom fell into civil war. Orodes II eventually took control, defeating his brother Mithridates III, and reclaiming Seleucia. This period also saw one of Parthia's greatest victories, the defeat of the Romans at the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE. Rome wasn't ready to give up. In 38 BCE, Roman general Ventidius defeated Orodes' son, Pacorus, in Syria, avenging Rome's earlier loss. Then, in 36 BCE, Mark Antony launched a campaign to attack Parthia. He planned to capture the fortress city of Fraspa, but rushed ahead without waiting for his supplies. The Parthians attacked his convoy, cutting off resources. Forced to retreat, Antony's army was constantly harassed by Parthian forces, losing thousands of soldiers in the process. Even though the Parthians managed to hold off Rome for many years, their empire faced growing problems. Internal rebellions and external invasions became harder to manage. In 115 CE, Roman Emperor Trajan invaded Parthia, capturing key cities like Seleucia and Ctesiphon. Though Trajan's forces later withdrew, the damage to Parthia's western front was severe. Meanwhile, in the east, the Kushan Empire under Kanishka took over Bactria, further weakening Parthian control. Rome struck again in 165 CE under Emperor Lucius Verus, sacking Seleucia and Ctesiphon once more. In 198 CE, another Roman invasion under Septimius Severus left Mesopotamia devastated. These repeated attacks took a heavy toll on the Parthian Empire. In the end, it wasn't Rome that delivered the final blow, but internal conflict. Artabanus IV's fight with his brother, Vologases Bey, left Parthia vulnerable. This allowed a new leader, Ardashir, to rise. In 224 CE, Ardashir overthrew the last Parthian king and founded the Sasanian Empire. And so, the Parthian Empire, once a symbol of resilience and clever strategy, came to an end. leaving behind a legacy that influenced the region for centuries.